Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today, my friend, Kira Sutherland. Kira is such a brilliant soul. She is so engaging, and really, she is this shining star in astrology. And I always have so much fun when I hang out with her, but I also learn a lot when I hang out with her as well. You've seen her here at Synchronicity Web TV before and at Synchronicity University as well. And now Kira is back at Synchronicity University, this time with a 5-week course on medical astrology, taught as only Kira can teach it. This is going to be a very special experience. And for a very limited time, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from Kira Sutherland. Probably the only time you're going to get to learn from Kira Sutherland at this rate, that's for sure. But yes, you're about to see how amazing Kira is. Kira, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I always love having a chat to you. Always. Yeah.
I know. We have so much fun together. There's such an easy energy, but it's also you. Like, you're so easy to talk to, and so insightful as well. And so I'm almost like, I know quite a bit about you because we've hung out before, but what is it that brought you to medical astrology in particular? Why do you love it? Why have you dedicated your career? And really, you are recognized as one of these world leaders in medical astrology today. What's brought you to that?
Yeah. Oh my God, what a question. It's, for those that don't know, I'm American born, but all my adult life, either in Europe and then mainly Australia. So my accent goes in and out, but I am a Australian naturopath, nutritionist, herbalist, and homeopath, and actually sports nutritionist, but that's beside the point. In studying, I'd always been interested in astrology. I grew up in Northern California from scientists, but one of my mom's friends was an astrologer. So I was always very curious about astrology. And when I was formally studying naturopathy in my early 20s in Australia, I was also taking an astrology class, and it was synchronicity that I was doing them at the same time, because naturopathy has all these herbal books with, like, Mars rules this, the older herbal books were, what planets rule what plants. And then my astrology teacher did one lecture on body rulership, Aries is the head, Taurus is, and I was like, oh my God, there's this whole system that used to be part of medicine, and we threw it out, 400 years ago or so. And for me, it was just, I love thinking in layers. And so for me, it just added on this extra layer of how I could look at people and understand, lots about them and their physical and mental, emotional bodies. So for me, it was kind of if I look back, when you look back on your life, you go, oh, it's such a clear path, but it was just all these things converging at once. And I just fell in love with it. And to be honest, I didn't know I was going to have a career in medical astrology. I always thought my career would be naturopathy, but I would use that kind of in the background. And then, I lecture in naturopathy, and then I started lecturing in medical astrology. And it's just, look, medical astrology's boomed in the last, I've been doing it almost 30 years, but the last 15 years, it's like gone so popular with natural medicine as well. So it's incredibly, like, I have so much fun. I think that's why it goes so well. It was because I love it, and I'm like in awe that everybody wants to know about it.
It's always amazing when you come across something that lights you up, right? So when you describe it as fun, like, I totally get it. Like, I teach a business class once a year with Kepler College, which is like this, very big deal institution. I think you are on the faculty as well at Kepler College.
Doing a course in just nutrition. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those places where I remember dreaming of teaching there one day, like
Mm,
way, way back in the day. So it's
yeah.
really exciting to be on the faculty. And I teach a business class. And, you know, I say to them, the students, that you like, in a way, what we do, yes, it's work and it's hard work, but in a way it isn't,
Yeah.
because you get to make this whatever you want it to be. And
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
years ago, before I went to university, I worked at Walmart for 2 years. That is a different kind of hard work than
Yeah.
building a channel. But it's really that thing that feels fun to you, that lights you up. That's what
Oh
you
my
want
God,
to
yes.
trust, because especially when you're an astrologer, your work really and your focus can be whatever you want it to be. It's an expression of you. And for you, I think that joy really shines for
Mm.
sure. Yeah,
Oh, and I just can't believe. I mean, this is vocation, right? This is those of us that get to our passion gets to be our work, and it's just so huge when you can actually make a career out of a vocation. But I think often it's an accident, right? It's just your hobby, and then it just gets bigger and bigger. It's amazing. I like. It's funny. A lot of naturopathic students, because I teach at a big formal university in nutrition and naturopathy in an undergraduate degree. And then they find out about all my astrology, because I'm not really, I'm loud about it, but I have a separate website on naturopathy, and because I don't need professors it to be in their face, right? And so sometimes my students find out and they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, yeah, literally, I fly around the world lecturing in medical astrology. It's insane. Like, it's insane to even say it, but it's so fun. And it's so fun. I mean, the way I do medical astrology is I'm not breaking any rules. You know, there's traditional medical astrology and it's very specific, but I definitely use those foundations, but I use it as a naturopath and I teach it that way as well. It's what can I do with it to make my health better? So I don't do as much, like, I don't do as some of it can feel, medical astrology is a bit dangerous, right? You got to be careful. It's not too negative. It is about disease. It was devised back when we didn't have blood tests, x-rays, antibiotics. And so it can feel really fatalistic to people. And I definitely don't do it that way. I haven't created my own thing. I'm just taking that spin on it of this is what you got. What can you go do with it? Like, let's work on your ailments and try to get you better. So I definitely bring in that. And, I really should say I practice naturopathic astrology, is what I should say.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
to use astrology in some way to be better, or to be more conscious, to be more aware, or to tap into it as a tool to be healthier is also
Yeah.
one part of our tradition as well.
Yeah. And we do that, regular astrology, as I call everything that's not medical, is about understand. I mean, the whole point is understanding ourselves, right? Which is working on ourselves. And, so regular astrology has that huge focus on the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, right? That is what it is. It's working on ourselves, understanding ourselves. And medical astrology just adds in the physical to that, and that understanding of our strengths and our weaknesses, or why we have certain likes and dislikes, or constitutionally what we've got and what we can do with it. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I just love you. I think you're so brilliant, and you're about to demonstrate how brilliant you are. So, everybody, once again, we know that Kira is coming back to Synchronicity University for a 5-week medical astrology course, and you've got a couple of weeks left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class. But right now, Kira and I are going to discuss planets in medical astrology. So, because I really like giving people value when they watch, and something that they can use, like even just some keywords. But can you start with talking about the role of planets in medical astrology?
Oh, yeah. So as much as we get very focused on, oh, you're a Sag, you're a Capricorn, you're like, planets are actually where it's at in medical astrology, because the planets are the ones that trigger off ailments, signs that it's interesting in medical astrology. There is an overlap between rulership of signs and rulership of planets. But if you go back far back in the history of astrology, it's really the planets that have the ailments, the planets that create the issues. So planets are a big thing in medical astrology, and one of the 5 courses is actually on the planets in depth. Um, but the planets, yeah, they're the triggers, and they're the holders of our strengths and weaknesses. The signs are just kind of added on top of that. So it's a big thing. Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so, how do you feel about giving us a few keywords per planet, just some
Yeah.
encapsulated
Yeah.
ideas? What do you always start with? Do you start with the sun or the moon, or do you go out
I
and
start with
in?
the sun. I start with
There
the
you
sun.
go.
I
Of
should go more
course.
traditional order, but yeah, I start with the sun. So the sun, there were keywords originally given by an astrologer named Heinrich Doth, Daath, and there's an umlaut in there over one of the A's. Um, I'm pretty sure it was Heinrich Doth that used these keywords, and I love them. I just had to create one for Pluto because he was writing before Pluto. So the sun is considered vital. Like, it is your core. In naturopathy, we have a term called the vital force. And your vital force is like your core, it's like your spirit's energy or your soul's physical energy. It's not hype up energy from caffeine or sugar. It's your core. Like, the way I talk about a vital force is it's like your little flame or your pilot light. If you have a gas stove, pilot light. And if we're doing all these great things and our sun is shining, our vital force or our flame gets really big. If we're unwell or we're stressed, the flame gets smaller. And so I really correlate that to the sun in medical astrology, because we talk about the sun being your it's vital. It's your, yeah, it's the core of who you are and how you vibrate. So I use that for the sun. And the moon is nutritive. It's where we get our nourishment, um, emotionally as well as nutritionally. The moon rules the foods we choose. And it's funny, I don't know if I was talking to a client or teaching a class, but we were talking about how the moon is so connected to emotional eating. And I'm like, well, of course it is. It rules those two things. It rules nutrition and it rules emotions. And, all of us in the world, basically almost everybody is an emotional eater. There are people that aren't, but, and we now know the food we eat actually changes how we feel. And a lot of us don't realize when you eat certain foods, it increases like your serotonin levels, which make you feel better. It's why when we're stressed or sad, we go for carbohydrates, because it changes. Carbs increase serotonin, which is what you want to not feel depressed or sad, right? And so the moon as a nutritive planet is just, yeah, it's huge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's amazing. I hadn't
Mm.
considered that. I mean, I've always known that I love sugar. I
Yes,
mean, I do.
I'm the
To
same.
me, I mean, I'm sure that you know so much more about health stuff than me. And I am like, whatever a foodie is, I am like the exact opposite of that. So I don't cook at all. When I was growing up, my mom was the eldest of 10 kids,
Oh
and
my
she had
God.
to care for people all her life. She cared for her siblings, then she became a healthcare aide and she cared for others. And I remember when I was really young, my mom said that God had a different plan for my life. So she didn't want me to learn to cook or clean or any of that stuff. And so I think I sort of took that on as well, and I never learned.
Well,
So, yeah,
can,
but
can we
let me
talk your
just say,
sun sign?
okay, yes, we can. But I do want to say that to me, it's either sweet or not sweet. To me, it's
Yeah.
like granola bars and, cereal, box cereal. I can live off that for a long time. But okay, yes, tell me about the sun. My son is in Aquarius.
Yeah. So I almost made the joke earlier, but I didn't. Almost everybody is, emotional eater or very focused on food. except Aquarians.
Oh,
Aquarians, if you ever hear anybody say, and there can be other things in Aquarians charts to make them more of a foodie. So if you're sitting there as an Aquarius going, that's not right, Kira, it depends where your moon is, your rising sign, how close Venus is to the sun or the moon. But Aquarians will classically say, I wish there was just a pill I could take every day so I didn't have to think about eating. The minute you hear that, there's some strong Aquarian in the chart, or the sun or the moon is sitting in the 11th house. There's this disassociation with food that it's not that they're not going to love food, but they're not, moon in the second, or, Taurus, or, there's foodie signs. And then there's signs that are like, the air signs. I mean, Libra's a bit different, but especially Aquarius and Gemini, they can still love food, but they're up busy, 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 and they can forget that they have a physical body that needs nourishment, right? So yeah, that's where I would put that too. You're born to not overly cook.
that is so brilliant because I mean, of course I get pleasure from food. I have a moon in Sag. I can overdo food. Venus and Capricorn conjunct that moon. And so, yes, there is, but it's more about I like sugar. I like the sweet stuff. I like the serotonin hit and all of that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The way that you described it is so right on with my placements in particular. Like I'm not about the nuances. I don't like to feel heavy, but because of the way I eat, which I know is not ideal, balanced. I don't know anything about a balanced anything. Is why like I'm always some version of curvy. Like I've been some version of curvy my whole life, and so I get that totally.
Being curvy, being a body type. And this is another thing in medical astrology, and I really need to write a class on this, and I haven't, but I talk about it in other classes. We all are different shapes and sizes, and we're so accepting that somebody is taller, somebody is short, right? Like we just automatically go, oh, well, that's your genetics. But we forget that our genetics is curvier or super tiny, skinny, and we're so focused in this modern world on, oh, you have to be this one body type. And we almost excuse ourselves if we're different, or we beat up on ourselves. We could have a whole conversation about social media and eating disorders, but we won't. But it's interesting because it needs to be celebrated. We're just like there's 4 elements, right? There's 4 basic body types, and there's probably more than 4. In one of the systems I use, there's 6 body types, and there's so much beauty. Chinese medicine has this, Ayurvedic medicine has this whole body typing, and we lost that again in Western medicine, which you can bring back in medical astrology, but there's this amazing strength to each body type that I think we need to celebrate more than we do. Yeah. If you go back to, the Baroque period, or I'm probably talking art there, but, the rounder woman with curves, the Venusian build was completely celebrated as the body build to have. And it's so funny how we've gotten very stuck in the last, probably since the 1920s, we've been stuck in one body type. And it's interesting to look at that astrologically. Sorry, I've totally gone off track for you, but there you go.
I love it. Well, I will say this. I remember, years ago when Saturn went into Sagittarius, that's my 6th house. And that was one of the worst time health-wise in my life. That was an incredibly difficult transit for me. And when I was a child, I was, very obese. I was very overweight. And I kind of maintained something that I felt good at. And then that Saturn went into my 6th house. And I know it isn't like this for everybody, but for me, just my health took such a dive. And I remember like on camera, I gained so much weight, and I felt so burdened and so unhealthy at the time. And I remember sharing once on my Facebook page, like I am trying to make peace with the fact that I've gained this weight and my health hasn't been good, but God, it's really hard for me. And at the time I was with somebody, and for him, he always, like, the one thing that kept me with him was that he told me I was beautiful every day, no matter what my
Mm.
weight was. But I remember how hard that was. And I remember a fan of mine, he commented when I shared this whole blurb about how awful I feel that I gained weight. He said, I don't know. I think that there's nothing wrong with a curvy girl.
Oh,
And
curvy girl, curvy anybody is beautiful, right? It's
that
Venus.
changed my life. It changed my
Mm.
life. Anytime I've been critical of my weight since then, I will remember those words. And it just has been this healing influence in my life.
Mm.
Uh, it would be so wonderful if we were in a world where body types weren't trends, but it was just, whatever body type you have, you have. There are going to be
Oh my
people who like
gosh.
it. There are going to be people who don't, and it doesn't matter. People for
Yeah.
you are going to like it. For other
Yeah.
people, it's not going to matter. And yeah, to just be totally open and accepting of who we are, that can facilitate great health for sure.
And astrology can be a great vehicle for that. And we have in the last 5 or 6 years celebrated curves a lot more than we have since, oh my God, probably since the 1920s or the 1950s. I don't even know. But it's interesting. It's interesting to look at those trends. I almost need, and maybe I should write this down, I should go back and look astrologically in history when we have had different body type trends and what was going on with those body types. But that's not really my forte. Maybe you and I will get together and do that sometime. It would be an interesting thing to look at, right?
Yeah. And I remember recently in a weekly video, I mentioned the Kardashians, right? As encapsulating some of what you just said. And a couple of people are like, oh no, Nadiya, don't talk about Kardashians and stuff.
Yeah.
But look, they are icons, right? They are like this cultural force. And you look at how really they launched with Pluto in Sagittarius. It was that transition, right? So they launched Pluto and Sagittarius with their curvy bodies and exemplifying that. And then
Yeah.
Pluto went into Capricorn, and so much of their focus became about their money, their success.
Business. Yeah.
Yes. But then we started getting this Aquarian energy as of late. And with the Aquarian energy, they have taken on this super skinny, like light as air kind of form. And so it's interesting to see how culturally we're seeing that exemplified.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that makes people kind of go, oh my God, I don't want body types to be a trend, because we know how much harm that can do, especially
Oh God.
those of
Yeah.
us who lived through the 90s, right? With heroin chic. I don't know
Oh yeah.
anybody who didn't hate their body at the time. Women,
I know.
anyways. Yeah.
I know. And yeah. I've got a teenager right now, right? I have a 17-year-old daughter. So it's watching that is frightening, right? And she's pretty stable, but it's still, watching it is scary what the trends are and aren't health wise. Yeah. Interesting where they're going, or with society is doing now with moving with that Pluto into Aquarius. And hopefully it doesn't, we've got, again, this is more going back to nutrition. We've got, I'm going to say it wrong, Olympic, the drug that everybody is now taking.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is
Semaglutide is
yes,
the normal, not normal, like the
yeah,
brand name is Ozempic. Semaglutide is the
Ozempic,
actual
yeah,
medicine. What are your
yeah.
thoughts on that? Yeah.
Ooh, I haven't researched it enough to know. And look, it's a drug that's there for very important reasons. It was created for people with diabetes, and, there's a place for it, but it's now become this, it's the shortcut. It's the pill. It's the Aquarian pill that I don't want to think about it. Think about, if you think about it that way, it's, it stops people from feeling hungry, right? It like completely eradicates somebody's appetite. How Aquarian is that from what I just talked about, saying Aquarians kind of, oh, just give me a pill so I don't have to think about it. So it's helping people disassociate's probably not the right word, but remove themselves a bit from hunger and cravings. It like cuts that off in some way. So it's interesting. I need to look at that more. There's a lecture in
Well,
there somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it works with your hormones. Like that, I
Mm,
know. Some version of this drug, like semaglutide or duaglutide, has been available for many, many years.
mm,
But now there's this whole like burst of research and all these new different things on the horizon.
yeah.
And it's interesting that with Ozempic in the last year, the whole diet industry has tanked, right? It's just tanked. And all these companies that were around for a long time are either rebranding or they're going bankrupt because
Oh, that's right. I
now,
did read that. Jenny Craig is gone bankrupt. I did read that.
yeah. And so now it's like dealing with it from that health hormonal perspective. And so, yeah, reading some of the studies, looking at how people are understanding these different medications, apparently lots of people, medical writers are saying that we're at the beginning of this big revolution. And based on what you just said, how perfect for Pluto and Aquarius, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, um, it's, to work on, as I was talking about, to work on satiety has to work on hormones because there's leptin and ghrelin and all these chemicals in the body that tell you when to be hungry or not, as well as the pancreas. So it is fascinating. If you want to go back into medical astrology, Mercury, the planet of communication,
Look at
is
you, the
the
segue.
I
Look at
know.
you.
No, but
You're so
it's
brilliant.
a segue, but it's not. It's the key word for Mercury is neural, like the nervous system, neural, Neural. My accent might make that a bit funny. Um, which is your nervous system pathways around the body, which is your nervous system is how your body communicates with different parts of the body. But the other way that the body communicates to itself is through hormones. And hormones, the organs that create hormones have multiple rulership because organs do more than one thing, right? Or, glands, I should say, like your adrenal glands, the pancreas, these are called endocrine glands. And they all have multiple rulerships because they do more than one thing. But if you back up in medical astrology, hormones are traditionally ruled by Mercury because hormones are the messengers of the body that are made in one spot and they travel somewhere else to tell the body what to do. So it's an interesting thing to look at, that this is this really mercurial shift at the same time. So it's fascinating to look at. I mean, Mercury's going so fast around the chart anyway, but to go along with that Aquarian, Pluto thing we're talking about, it's just amazing. And, we're having a revolution in how we're having that very Aquarian change of how we're dealing with it or how drugs are dealing with it. Yeah, very interesting. Mm,
Yeah. Ideally, you don't want people to feel like, and some celebrities have talked about how there's been pressure to take these drugs,
oh God, yeah.
and how that's made them feel. And that's not good. I'm hopeful that people will be able to see it as a medical issue. So it's no longer
Yes.
an issue of, having a character defect just because you have, or you're curvy or you have extra pounds, but rather maybe a shift in consciousness so that we start seeing these things as a medical issue that can have a
Mm,
solution, and we can find a solution and maybe, discover or develop lots of different
yeah.
tools that are available to people that are safe so that people can just feel better. They can feel
Yeah.
how they want to feel. Like it's
Yeah.
not even about ego or fitting into anything, just for you to feel good. Whatever
Mm,
medically can happen
whatever
to
it
help you
takes.
with
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah. And
wonderful, healthy.
I'm not against those drugs. They're lifesavers for a lot of people. So, but it's interesting how it's becoming more universal beyond what they were originally designed for. Yeah.
Yeah. My dad is type 2 diabetic, and he has to take Ozempic as part of what he
Yeah.
does and the
Yeah.
different injections he takes. And so he complains about it. He said, like I used to be so satisfied when I would eat. I enjoyed it so much. And now it's like, that thing that I used to feel, I just don't feel, and I don't
Yeah,
like it.
because it
Yeah.
stops that a little bit. Yeah, I need to look
Yeah.
more at the biochemistry of how it's changing things. But yeah, it
Mm.
is interesting. It's so interesting. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
wonderful to see how things are evolving, but then also how you are bringing the astrological perspective into how things are evolving as well. And so you mentioned Mercury, the
yeah.
neural
Mercury, neural.
pathways, and okay. So
Yeah, so
next up,
nervous
yeah,
system and yeah, hormones and things like that. Yeah, and lungs. You
interesting.
know, Mercury has part rulership. You know, we think of Gemini and the lungs. Cancer also has part of the lungs, but you'll learn about that in a class I teach. But yeah, Mercury also, you know, the body communicates through breath. So, and we now know there's so much connection between how we breathe and our nervous system with the vagal nerve. And there, yeah, we're just learning so many amazing things in medicine that medical astrology has always connected. It's just fascinating. I'll go more into that in the class. So after Mercury, so Venus.
Venus? Yeah.
Venus, we've talked about this a little bit. Like her key word from Doff was actually lymphatic. Now, the lymphatic, that's a verb, though. It's not the lymphatic system. That's ruled by something else. The lymphatic system, for people that don't know, is like your junk collecting system or your garbage system, but it's also part of your immune system. And if we're using all the planets, that would actually go to Neptune. But your Venus is in a verb is lymphatic. She's big and um, you know, there's moisture and she's loose. She's not that Mars, I'm going to go pump iron and build all this muscle. She's soft and squishy and she's luscious. And I am using the traditional she for Venus. In lectures, we can go over that, but I do, when we teach medical astrology, we really need to, you know, we could use yin if we wanted to, but I tend to stick with she, he, just for Mars and Venus, and then Mercury can be non-binary, which they have always been. But Venus is this, you know, think of it, Aphrodite and, or yeah, very yin, rules sugar, rules sweets. You know, there's a laxity or a softening of tissues to do with Venus. Mars, as I said, very yang or traditionally considered a masculine planet. And Mars rules the muscles of the body. It rules protein, but it is, you know, it's one of the traditional malefics. Its key word is actually inflammatory. And inflammation, medically, is heat, redness, pain, and swelling. Now, we don't have to have all of those at once, but inflammation, it brings agitation, it speeds things up, you know, and the way I teach medical astrology too is you do have your traditional benefics and malefics, but in modern times, the malefics can be really useful health wise, and the benefics can be our downfall. You know, Venus is sugar and Jupiter is fats. And those are very plentiful in the modern world, whereas hundreds of years ago, we didn't have access to those as easily, right? If you go back to caveman days, sweet was, you know, only in summer, only when you found fruit and berries. It depends where you were living, or, you know, you managed to locate a beehive. Like, sweet doesn't exist in nature in abundant amounts. So yes, I stick to traditional malefics and benefics, but Mars is also about getting your sports on. It's where your drive is and where you expend energy and you sweat. And so I use Mars very much for how to use it to help with your body and metabolism and things like that. Mars has a big rulership over how fast we burn our calories. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so now we start moving. You mentioned Jupiter already.
Yeah.
What else can you mention
So,
about Jupiter?
yeah. So Jupiter's keyword is plethoric, to be plentiful. It is about fat gain. And look, as much as everyone's like, oh my God, fat. there's a certain percentage of body fat that we need to have to keep our organs protected. Our hormones are made out of proteins and fats. There's an enormous amount of fat within our brain. There's fat that coats all of our nerves. Like, fat is vital for the body as well. But yeah, plethoric, we overdo it where Jupiter is. And in modern times, it's pretty easy to overdo it. So yeah, we got to keep our Jupiter a little bit tamed at times, food wise. Um, let's see. So Jupiter, Saturn, chronic
Saturn.
planet. Yeah. And
Ah, okay.
again, Saturn causes lots of issues medically, but it can also be where we find structure or where we need, like you were talking about. So Saturn is considered the chronic planet or restrictive, under functioning, blockages, problems, slowing of things. But when Saturn transits, especially to sixth, often people, like you were saying, oh my God, I had the hardest time with my health. But what happened is Saturn made you ground into your sixth house. Like, it called you there to do the hard work to find some structure with your health, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Saturn
not fun.
brings, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, form and structure. And, the sixth house traditionally is the house of illness and disease. But if you look at the other definitions of the sixth, hard work, service to others, or service, it's the detailed house. If you stand back and look at what health is, health, to be healthy, is a daily ritual. It's a daily routine. It's not fun. Oh my God, being really healthy is very boring, but we need it to have this vehicle to go do what we want to do. But it's the sixth house brings us to the mundane life of having to be of service to our own physical body. And I find it, that it's that portal between the foods we've eaten and them becoming part of our physical form. If we look at the traditional ruler of the sixth is Virgo. Virgo rules the small intestines, and that's where the food we eat actually is absorbed through the gut lining and turns into our physical form. And it's the sixth house it's a lot of work, but hard work is really like, you then look, if you look at the traditional earth houses, and Jansky talked about this. Carl Jansky was one of my favorite medical astrologers who passed in the 80s. And he talks about, the sixth house being where you're, becoming who you are. And then the 10th house, if you're looking at the traditional earth houses, the 10th house, fruits of your labor, it's also what the rest of the world sees of our physical form and our reputation. No one ever talks about it. Reputation is also what we look like in some ways. And he had a really interesting take on that the 10th house is kind of the hard work from the sixth. You see it in the 10th. He
Wow,
talks
that's
about the
fascinating.
second
Yeah.
house as being, second house is a food house, how you value the foods you pick, what you choose. And he talks a lot about second to sixth to 10th because it's the material houses of traditional earth.
Wow. So do you take outer planets into consideration?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. A lot of medical astrology is based on the traditional planets, the visible planets, but there's no way I could practice medical astrology without the outers. And I see the outers, especially by transit, are some of our biggest triggers to focus on health stuff or to, call us back to it. And yeah, so Uranus is considered the spasmodic planet. So spasms, cramps, it's an electrical planet as well. If you think of Mercury being the physical nervous system, Uranus is like the messages being sent around the body. Um, so unusual ailments, odd functioning. Something's working, then it's not working, right? Things come and go. And then we have Neptune, which was titled the comatic planet. And I'm not talking about just to be in a coma, but it's to be, you know, an
On
example would be
automatic?
a
Yeah.
drug-induced state, or drunk, or it's, Neptune rules the drugs and the medicines that alter our perception from normal reality. So even though things like, coffee and other stimulants will go to the, in traditional rulerships, everything goes to the, traditional planets. But if you look at Neptune, it should have rulership of a lot of drugs, even things like, and it doesn't have the traditional ruler of this, but caffeine. Caffeine is a drug that alters how we feel. We feel like we have more energy. Everything feels easier when we have caffeine in our system. And that is a comatic experience, because your body is telling itself it feels different than it actually should. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Wow. And I just realized while you were talking, I think it was right around the time of Neptune's discovery that modern medicine figured out like
Yes.
anesthesia, like how to
Yes.
really knock
Yes.
you out, not just laughing
Yes.
gas, not just distract you, but knock you out for
Yes. Oh my
surgery.
God. Yes.
Wow.
So, which is mind blowing. And I only learned that last year. But other people might have been lecturing on it, but I was writing a lecture on Hygeia, the asteroid Hygeia, because I've been following her for about the last decade in people's charts, because she's kind of like your own little naturopath, but that's another story in itself. So Hygeia was found 2 years after Neptune was found. And so then I started reading about Neptune, and I came across the information, which somebody else wrote, obviously, about when we learned how to use anesthetic, is what you're talking about, to truly put people to sleep in medicine. That was being used. We started using it the same year we found Neptune, literally the same year. You can't make up those coincidences. Like, it's not a coincidence, right? And do you know, to this, and a lot of people don't know this, everyone always in modern medicine, in regular medicine, is like, it has to be evidence-based. We need, verification, evidence-based. Whereas as a naturopath, we use a lot of herbs that have, years of empirical evidence, or centuries. We still don't quite understand how anesthetic does what it does. We don't actually have complete understanding of the biochemistry of what's happening to put us to sleep. So I love that such a Neptunian thing can't actually totally be explained. We just know how much to use per, what sex you are, and how much you weigh,
Wow.
right?
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And Neptune makes things in medical astrology, makes things very hard to diagnose. And that's very chromatic, like uncertain mists. Where Neptune resides in your chart can be very difficult to see. And that's a real, like, people born with Neptune in the sixth go to medical astrologers all the time, because modern medicine can never figure out what's going on with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like my story actually, like, because I have Neptune in the sixth as well. And I just have felt like doctors don't get it. Like, whatever it is, I've felt very disappointed by doctors again and
Yeah.
again. Now, when Saturn did transit my sixth, though, it was going to an endocrinologist that solved the problem. So I
Yeah.
needed that because Saturn was already transit, and,
Yeah.
so that expert energy was there. But yeah, I have had that experience so often, not as
Yeah.
much when I'm abroad and the relocation has, Neptune
Ah,
not in the
interesting.
sixth. Isn't it interesting?
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That's so fascinating. And you meet, the minute I meet somebody, even if I'm not doing medical astrology, but the minute I meet somebody who's like, I hate the medical profession, they don't know what they're, the minute somebody starts saying that, what you really are hearing is their story of disappointment, that no one can ever figure out what's wrong with them. And 9 times out of 10, they have Neptune on an angle, or more than likely it's in the sixth house. And I know everyone's going to have this question now. Neptune transiting the sixth, I don't feel like brings that as much as a natal thing. Yeah, you'd probably want to be more careful, but I haven't overly been like, yeah, you can't figure out because of that. It's transiting there for so long. So don't freak out if you have Neptune about to transit your sixth. I don't find that as much of an issue.
Yeah. Try not to freak
Yeah.
out in general. It's a good idea
Yeah.
not to. And
Yeah.
finally, Pluto as our final
Yeah.
outer planet. Yeah.
So it wasn't given a word originally, in the writings of Doth, because obviously they didn't know about it. Or so, you would just transformative, or I should probably find a better medical word for it, but it's transformative, where it goes by transit. Often we need to transform what we're doing with our health in that area, or we undergo big change, which can be a really positive thing as well. But it is also, Pluto rules excretion. It's detoxification is actually probably the word I should give it, but that's very medical.
Elimination. That's the perfect word for it, right? Because you're really
Mm.
releasing with Pluto.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably a better word than, maybe I'll change that, because I have always used transformation, but it's elimination and shifting, right? And elimination is transforming.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kira, you're amazing. I love you. Once again, everybody, Kira Sutherland is back at Synchronicity University, this time with a 5-week course on medical astrology. You will learn so much from one of the world's best medical astrologers. And for a very limited time, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate, probably the only time you're going to get to learn from Kira at that rate. Kira, I adore you. I always learn from you. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. Every time we get to chat, it's always such a joy and so exciting.
I know, right? We have so much fun together. That's the
know,
truth.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Kira. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.